Good afternoon. Maybe not high enough yet. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
It's 74 degrees.
Oh, hi, Bill. I can hear you. I love the spring energy that's happening. Feels like the good weather. This is going to be a great day. We're so happy that you're here. Thank you all so much for joining us for the What Matters to Me and Why program series. My name is Tamra Bauer. I work here at the Staley School as the director of our leadership and service programs, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as chair of the What Matters to Me and Why lecture series. A big welcome to all of you here in person, as well as all the folks that are joining us on Zoom. For those in person, please continue to eat and to enjoy. If you head out these back rooms, there are restrooms to both sides. We want you to be comfortable. For those of you on Zoom, please be sure to be muted. And Tracy Hurt is your host if you need to chat or communicate or have any questions. The What Matters to Me and Why Speaker Series is sponsored by the Staley School of Leadership and supported by a cross-campus planning committee whose names now appear on this slide. So if you are a member of this committee or if you have been a past speaker of What Matters to Me and Why, please stand and just be recognized. Thank you. What Matters to Me and Why series began in 2017 and was designed to build and strengthen bonds between people who teach, learn, and work together daily to help foster understanding of how we each embrace our values and the K-State principles of community. Since then, we've had the opportunity of hosting 32 K-State faculty and staff members from a wide variety of departments, experiences, backgrounds, and beliefs. Each of these presenters have shared a story of their personal journey, elaborating on how they have chosen to live their life, the core values that they've adopted, and the lessons that they've learned. Through this personal storytelling, these lectures have supported K-State's principles of community and the Health Promoting University. So speaking of Health Promoting University, did you know it's HPU week? As a health promoting campus, we are committed to prioritizing the physical, mental, and emotional health of our campus community to help foster an environment where everyone can thrive. As we look at the events and activities aimed to bring awareness and support of well-being and health through HPU Week, one of those key areas is social connection. And at its core, What Matters to Me and Why is about this connection, creating a space for meaningful storytelling that deepens our understanding of one another. In a world that often prioritizes productivity over reflection, these conversations can remind us that our values, experiences, and choices shape not just our careers, but the way we show up in our communities. We are excited to hear from our provost, Dr. Jesse Mendez, and have him share a little of his story and the values and the moments that have shaped his life. To help introduce him today, I'd like to invite up Lynn Carlin, a recently retired K-State colleague of many of us, and we're excited to hear from her.
Thank you, Tamara, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today for many reasons. One, this program is a wonderful program that was started in 2017. It's one of my favorite programs that I've attended when I've been here at K-State. It really is about individuals sharing their stories and helping build the K-State community. I also am happy to have the honor of introducing Provost Mendez and the opportunity to be back on campus after 7 weeks of retirement. For those of you who don't know me, I worked for nearly 20 years in the provost office in various capacities, meaning I've worked with 4 provosts, 2 interim provosts, and 3 presidents. So I know provost and provost office. Most of that time I served as a special assistant to the provost and executive vice president, coordinating university strategic planning and institutional initiatives, and I've worked with many of you over the years, for which I'm grateful. So I want to talk a moment. Mary asked me to talk a little bit about the position of the provost. The provost in higher education is a critical one, and it's unique. I came from the federal government, and I have to be honest, I didn't have a clue what a provost did when I first came here. And so we would often get the questions from folks in the provost office. What is a provost and what does a provost do? As the chief academic officer, a provost oversees and shapes an institution's academic mission and operations. Being that I was newly retired, I didn't want to think too hard when I was putting together what is a provost. So I checked with AI yesterday. And that quick check gave me a long list of what a provost does. But just to name a few things, the ways a provost influences a university is in the quality of its curriculum and its academic programs, in the development and implementation of academic policies within a shared governance model. It's faculty development, the makeup of our faculty, their development and support, a positive learning environment for all learners, just to name a few things. You can check it out. There is a laundry list of things that a provost has responsibility for. But for me, this statement summarized it all. In essence, a provost is a driving force behind a university's academic mission, working to ensure the university is a vibrant and successful environment for learning, research and scholarship, and faculty development. What matters and why it matters to each of us individually defines how we move through our lives, both personally and professionally. It shapes how we interact with our family, our friends, our community, and in our work. So what matters to the Provost Mendez, and why will impact our community as a whole. I worked with Provost Mendez from his first day on the job last spring until 7 weeks ago. And I know his commitment to helping make K-State an environment where all learners can thrive and reach their full potential, and where all of our faculty and staff are empowered to do their very best. Please join me in welcoming Provost and Executive Vice President Jesse Mendez to the podium to share his story of what matters to him. And then here's your, oh, great. Yeah.
Wow. So in preparing this, it was really a daunting task. And a dream for a narcissist to come in here and talk about themselves. And it's a challenge I would have been happy to take up when I was younger. And so as I gotten a little older and grayer, it's a little bit more hesitant about that overall. And so I'm going to just kind of do storytelling and tie in my own family's history in this and how I kind of see this all tying together. I do have a couple of things a couple of objectives I need to meet. You know, I was like, do I be really geeky about it and develop a rubric? But I just developed the checklist in my head. And the first thing that when talking to Mary, told her about this, she said, make sure to put baby pictures. So this is the first obligation of a baby picture. And I want you to picture me, because I've gone through this at least 4 times, I've read 4 different drafts. So this is what I looked like last night, shirtless in front of a 1970s typewriter, just ching-a-ray, you know, I don't even know what I'm typing. Actually, in this picture, I just like the sound that typewriters made in the 70s. They're just, I can't, I have no idea what I was writing. So, you're just trying to think about a way in which to kind of talk about this. For those of you who don't know, I'm from Wichita Falls, Texas. I was born and raised there. The first 22 years of life I spent there. The picture you have up here was taken when I was 5 years old. At Midwestern State University, they had the Fantasy of Lights. It's a community partnership with the university. There was a large benefactor that donated all the family's lights back in the 70s. And the university maintains a beautiful community partnership between the city of Wichita Falls and the university. And so went there every year as a small child and so on. Went there last year, so there's a 45-year difference between the two. I've changed a little bit since then. But it's, to me, it was such a beautiful place to grow up. And so that's the backdrop of the story starting out. I can't help myself to think about conceptual models when kind of framing my family history behind this. And for those in education, I'm using Yoso's theory on community culture wealth concept overall. And I think each one of you in your own family stories can tie in different parts of this. And the whole point is like, for people's academic journey, we draw on different forms of capital. And there's different kind of typologies of capital. There's social capital, aspirational capital, capital from family. social capital, navigational capital, resistant capital, what gets us through adversity, linguistic capital for those who are bilingual overall. And I think this is the framework which I think fits overall with what I'm about to share with you today. So today I'm just going to really, our brief time together, just a couple things to keep in mind. I just want to recognize that none of us here are because of the work that we did personally. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, family members, mentors, and they all play a role in this. And could be a form of aspirational capital. Also, we need to be very careful about honoring our path as acts north tourists. Some of you have always wanted to do what you're doing now. And some of you have taken the long and windy road. I had no idea what a provost was when I was an undergrad. And so my path here has been very organic. I've met a couple of different people at different times in my life that had I not met them, I probably would have made the same decision going forward. Also, just being in that my mindset, we need to be grateful for the mentors we have. We have mentors for different types of work that we do. There's mentors that are really great with career advice. There's mentors that are really great with life advice. And so I tapped into all types of mentors throughout my life on this planet so far. Also, it's just very important not to take ourselves very seriously. This is not in the Yoso model. This is a humor capital. We can be so tied up in the work that we do on a daily basis. We just don't take time out to actually enjoy life and there's certain value of being just a little silly, and getting back to just having fun. I just remember, being part of a family, I see as part of my obligation at my particular age is to help the next generation, either in my family or outside my family or my community, for continued success across the board. And that's the mentality I've kind of carried on to the role of being provost. This is my kid brother, Michael Mendez. He has his own practice in Lubbock, Texas. He's a physician, really great at what he does. He's about 5 years younger than I am, obviously not as handsome as I am. But the picture up here, I was about 7 years old. That's this little fella here. I know maybe some of you have the greatest Christmas ever as a little kid. Mine was 1985, 1984, where I got this guy. The difference between my brother and I is not only just age and attractiveness, but he did not care about the stickers. So when you looked at his version, when you get these toys, you put your own stickers on. His was all over the place and so on. I was very meticulous. This is the original one. This is the same one that's up there. I have no idea why we're wearing camouflage at all. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on in that picture. There's a fall aspect in the back. Have no idea and so on. But to humor ourselves, we took this picture about 8-9 years ago to humor my mom overall. So family camouflage did that and so on. We also do a lot of cosplay. So, we like Star Wars, we dress up. And this is about 2 years ago, and that's Danny Trejo of actor fame overall. He came at Tech 2023 overall. So I had my brother come out. This is my cousin Lorenzo up there. And so got to spend time with him. But he has been my partner in crime. He's highly educated, really successful what he does. I always hate going to church with my mom, with my parents, with him, because my mom would always gush about what we're doing, and I always kind of sleeped in the background. My brother would love this type of environment to talk about himself. I don't enjoy it so much. And the reason being is I feel like this work that I did, that I've accomplished, is because of my grandparents and my great-grandparents. So I'm gonna walk through my ancestors overall with this. There's 4 families. There's the Perez family for one. This is my great-grandfather, Victor Perez. He was a migrant worker. And so when you talk about my connection to land grant and ag work, it is from the migrant worker perspective overall. Later on in life, he was also a mariachi as well. And so he passed when I was about 13, 12 years old. Up to when I was in college and it was in Wichita Falls, there would be members of his old band that would come and play for us and we were at a restaurant. And they did that in terms of respect for him. And he was already passed away, but that's the type of community Wichita Falls is. Very much like Manhattan here. This is Estefana, this is my great-grandmother, also born in Mexico, migrant worker, family matriarch. As you can tell, she hated having her picture being taken. And so this is when my mom got married in 1972, and she finally agreed to take a picture with my mom. I obviously was not there. So my mom told me a story. And right when they took the picture, she turned her head and so on. So this is exactly her personality going. She was always very gentle. I loved spending time with her when our paths were crossed as well. My grandfather, Mercedes Perez Sr., passed away a couple of years ago. Also a migrant worker, was a machinist overall. Had he had the opportunity, he had a fourth grade level of education. Had he had the opportunity that he deserved, he would have no doubt been in the ICE college here. He just did not have the opportunity to do so. He is the hardest working man I've ever met overall. He worked until his mid 70s and worked 3 jobs at a time. Was a great man. Alonzo family, my great grandfather, Alonzo Aurelio, he is from Mexico, came here, migrated here, worked for Southern Pacific Railroad, which is now Sprint. Went from a railroad to, the telecommunication company we all know and love. Self-taught himself English, married a young woman, Maria, in Mexico, immigrated over here. She passed away at a really early age. My grandmother, Caroline Perez, I was really close to her. Really close to her. She was, I think what the kids would call an alpha female, in a good way, and so she was very protective of all of her grandkids. Um, and when let me get this to your story. I'll come down, for like being proclaimed, Mike Myers. Okay. So, throughout my career, I've left Texas and taken jobs elsewhere, Indiana, Indiana, Florida, and Wisconsin, elsewhere. When the job opened at Texas Tech, and I didn't tell anybody, and when yeah, I kept it as a secret that I was interviewing for a job at Texas Tech. And it was I wasn't sure if I was going to apply or not. And she said something organically, not knowing anything. She said, "It's time to come home." And it was 2 weeks before I interviewed. And yeah, so anyway, I just really missed her. Well, she had so many things interesting about her. She was the first Latina to attend public high school in Archer City, where whoever classmates was an author by the name of Larry McMurtry. And so she lived a very storied life, and obviously lived to a very old age at 88. And so, but just an amazing woman. And I don't think I would definitely be in the top 2 mentors I've had overall. Mendez family, I'm not sure, I suspect, this is as far as I'm able to go so far. I suspect that this, of all the family strands of the 4, this is the one that could be original Texan. Santos Rubio, I'm 95% sure that this actress, born in San Marcos. I never got to meet her, obviously, overall. My great-grandmother, Felicia Mendez, worked at the Holt Hotel, which is now a luxury hotel in downtown Wichita Falls. Also a very hard worker. Wasn't able to meet her. I missed her by 2 years. She was to my dad what mom, Caroline, was to me, overall. This good-looking, Al Pacino-looking guy here is my grandfather, Loreto Mendez. He is amazing. He was a Mason, a very gentle man, supported his grandmother, his mother. He supported 3 generations at his household, overall, and tremendous amount of willpower, and also a great person to learn things from. My male role models, they all had, you've heard me talk about, my grandfather, Mercedes, that passed away. My dad is a former Marine. He enlisted. He was not drafted. There was the draft. His number was not called. Next day, he signed up. I asked him why. His answer, and this is typically my dad, he's like, "I don't know." And so went there in 1968, served, was injured in Vietnam, and Pell Grant recipient, finished his degree on the GI Bill. Took about 10 years to finish his bachelor's degree, overall. Later on, had a long career as a social worker. The strong silent type, in terms of masculinity. My uncle Mercedes is one that exposed me to music, Depeche Mode, Pet Shop Boys, 1980s music. I mean, he's the one that kind of opened up my world overall. He would have made an amazing lawyer. He has his bachelor's degree. He had an option to go to law school, decided not to. And he's like, screw it. I'm going to be a hairstylist in Austin. And so he is my spirit animal. And so each one of these have their own definition of masculinity. And none of these forms are very toxic, but they were highly diverse. And that taught me so much as far as how I wanted to kind of live my life as a man overall. So I would identify these three amazing men as role models. Sorry, South Sequence. This is the Rodriguez side of the family. My dad's side, Guillermo Mexico, day labor, Jesusa. Once again, we did not overlap with my great grandparents, unfortunately. And my grandmother, I was also close to, Julia, passed away, when I was in college as well. Very gentle, very kind. This is a picture from the mid-50s overall. And so my dad's the second tallest guy there. And so this is during her birthday. And so beautiful family. Parents, they are the first generation students in the family. As I mentioned before, my dad started class in 1968, went to Vietnam, came back, finished his degree. I was actually at his graduation overall. So that's where you see the picture up there is when he walked across the stage in 1982 overall. My mom got her associate's degree, had me, my brother stayed at home, worked for the American Red Cross, took a couple of years to finish. She went from start to finish, took her 10 years to finish her bachelor's degree in nursing. Actually, this was back before we had this education. So every Wednesday and Thursday, she would drive from Wichita Falls to Arlington, Texas, to UT Arlington, and spend a day and a half there for about 3 years. But persistence paid off and so on. She worked really hard for her degree. Really, as I'll explain later, they are the reason why the work that I do right now. I would love to be where when I think about the work that land grants do, we're about access and opportunity. And there's a way in which we can shrink down to serve students like my parents, like my grandparents, and make ourselves more accessible and shorten the graduation time to get a degree. Let's do that. So. Here's some more background information. Here's Mary. Here's another picture of a little kid over there. It's my first trip to any college campus at Texas Tech in 1979. This one right here in the middle, I was a first-year doctoral student at Indiana. One thing you've heard me talk some of you have heard me talk before about weight issues. I've throughout my history in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now I put a stop to my 50s. I usually balloon in weight about 50 pounds, overall. I hit my zenith in terms of hitting the heavyweight was in my 20s, where I reached almost 300 pounds because I didn't know how to manage stress. And so as we go through health promotion week here at the university, just be very careful. All the work that we do, all the stress we do, we have to take care of ourselves, take care of our bodies, take care of our emotional state as well. Was also a student activist when I was an undergraduate. I protested a lot. So this was one I took when in 1997, there was an immigrant march on DC. So it's, once again, my attitude is, I'm a fourth generation American, but yet, my family still has an immigrant story. Overall, we were all immigrants here, with the exception of the indigenous tribes here in this country. And so we just have to remember that anytime we hear about international students, we follow those. Tapestry support mentors, I've had plenty of them in different parts of my life. They've helped me with different forks in the road. Ed St. John, I met when I was a law student at Indiana. I went through sort of an identity crisis there. Up to that point, I was dead set on getting my law degree, practicing a couple of years in Texas, and then run in politics. That was the idea. And then after my first year, I was a guardian ad litem at the Child Advocacy Clinic, that changed things a lot. And so one of the first appointments I made was with Ed St. John. He's, at that time, Indiana was the top 5 program in higher education and student affairs. I didn't know that at the time. And I'm horrified to think about what kind of silliness I talked to him about overall, not knowing who he was or his research agenda overall. But he is the one that got me turned on into higher education and student affairs and post-secondary work. He gave me the first book he gave me to read was John Rawls on social justice. And that really just sealed me into the direction I'm going into right now. The gentleman below him is Michael Olivas. Some of you in higher education might recognize that name. Longstanding faculty member at the University of Houston, has a law degree and PhD, does research in immigration law and higher education policy. I did something you're not supposed to do during that time. I left my PhD program before I was finished and moved to Houston because I thought that was cool. Met Michael Olivas about 2 months into Houston. He agreed to serve on my dissertation committee. At that time, as anybody's been through that phase, not saying any names, Blake, but going through that process of writing a dissertation, it's a long and windy road. And at that time, I really needed help. I needed mentorship. Michael was phenomenal. He was a different type of mentor. And I'm going to say this, it's going to sound weird, but I mean this in a loving way. If I had a dysfunctional relationship with my dad, it would be this relationship that Michael and I had. In a nice way. He was a tiger dad in a weird way. There was one day I came in, I had a 240-page dissertation draft. He took 120 pages of that and he separated his walks over to his office and then dumps in the trash. And he's like, how did you get through law school? That is not your best work. And he kept on just hammering me for the next 20 minutes, saying that was not my best work getting forward. Well, his point was, and this is when talking to other people who know and love him, this was what that people called the Olivas treatment. And it was tough love. And he was right. It was not my best work overall. I eventually did right the ship overall. Our relationship continued on until his death a couple of years ago. He would always, I would always try to please him, and he would come up with a snarky comment. And so when I said, hey, I just got my first deanship at Indiana IUPUI, he's like, why not Texas A&M? That was his first comment, overall, constantly. And so I'm sure he would have had a snarky comment when I accepted the provost position here, but he meant it out of love. He just wanted nothing but the best overall. And so a different type of mentor. Pat Karcher. Pat Karcher was the first admin I worked with as a school head at Oklahoma State. Pat was there for 20, 30 years, before I stepped foot on there. She is working with staff, I'm amazed in administration or in academia how poorly we treat staff when they know much more than we do about the university. And I think the reason I was so successful as a department chair was because of Pat. And I relied on her. We still talk on a weekly basis. I will text her every Friday. Overall, she's retired since then. She is, one of the best admins I've ever worked with ever, until I met Lynn. So, so there's Mount Rushmore, there's Pat, and there's Lynn, right? So, but she's absolutely phenomenal, and I'm forever grateful to her. Katy Perry is not the actor, not the singer, right? Katy Perry, this lovely woman here, was the first person to give me a shot at an administration. She took over. The previous school head was released. She took over as intern, and I was the year before I got tenure. She's like, "Hey, I need help. Why don't you be my associate chair overall?" Before then, she was always a mentor to me during my tenure track years overall. And if you know anything about higher education, there's not many Latina mentors in academia, at least where I was at and so on. But my experience has been other places when brown isn't there, black has been. And so Dr. Perry was, once again, I wouldn't be doing what I was doing if she didn't give me a chance to serve as her associate school head. That was my gateway drug into what I'm doing now. And so Sissy Carroll. She is everything I know as a dean and as a senior administrator, I learned off Sissy. I was it was kind of I didn't know whether to trust her at first. When you meet someone, you don't know whether to trust them sometimes. And she was it took a couple of weeks to kind of, for us to warm up to each other. At that time, I was an assistant school head. And there was a master swimming. I was really into swimming during that time. And so it was a master class on the campus of Oklahoma State. And then she showed up, and she happened, I didn't learn this till later. She was a diver and swimmer at Auburn University. And so didn't know her at all. And then she stops, we were all swimming in the group, and she stops and she's like, hey, and not even know, she's like, I noticed you're not kicking your legs when you swim. We're doing freestyle and so on. You're just using all your arms. So she started coaching me through my freestyle routine and so on. And from there on, we just developed a great, relationship after that. She hired me as her school head when she left Oklahoma State and became dean at the University of Central Florida in their College of Education and Community Innovation. And then she's like, hey, I can't find anybody to be my associate dean. Are you interested in the job? And I was like, oh, totally. So once again, I had 5 glorious years working with her. She's the one that told me that you can be strong and kind. They're not mutually exclusive. And sometimes we rely too much on masculine leadership traits, where there's not, that's one way to do it, but it's not the only way overall. And so I credit her to, I think, teaching a very healthy way to help be a servant leader to the units I work with. This is my old crew at Texas Tech. This was taken the third year of my 5 years there. This was right a little bit after COVID was kind of clearing overall. The hardest part of taking the job here was leaving them. It took about 2 years to put them all together, another year and a half to get everybody to kind of gel together. At that time, I was obsessed, well, I still am, with Vanity Fair shoots. And so I like Ann Leibovitz, and everybody's familiar with her work and so on. And so I was like, oh man, we should totally do this. We should totally have an Ann Leibovitz sort of shoot and so on. And so this is exactly what we did overall. And so worked with phenomenal department chairs there, great associate deans. It was, man, I cried like a baby when they gave me a throwing away party, before I took the job here at Kansas State. I miss them a lot. I miss each and every one of them. And it was really a great time in my life. So those 5 years were really great. And my goal is to replicate that here, that sense of camaraderie here in our college community. And it's going to take time to get there. We're about 10 months in, but we have some good starting blocks to start building. I know there's a couple of new people here, and I love working with the deans we have here as well. But this is why I want to get to. I want to get to where we're working seamlessly and have a really great working culture here in the provost's office and the university overall. There's one individual of that group there that he's the gentleman standing on top there, Dr. Doug Hammond. He was a department chair, longstanding department chair at Texas Tech in their Tech Teach program. When I interviewed there, I got the sense that he and I were not going to get along. When you interview, you meet people, it's like, oh, not sure. There's a weird vibe between us. Not sure. We're going to play it out and so on. He asked me a lot of fastball questions, and he didn't like me. I didn't like him. First couple, weeks and months. We started warming up to each other. After we started talking, I got to understand where he was coming from. He was uncompromising where he wanted to see teacher education. And really believed in the product, and really was a maverick with a purpose. Didn't really care for bureaucracy or rules. It got him in trouble. But he was always just trying to push the envelope, but had all the great reasons to do so. He came into my office. This was my last year at Tech. Second to last year at Tech. And he said, I need to dial it down a little bit. I need to start dedicating my time to other things. I want to go back to faculty, and it is time for me to start focusing on research. I think I can make more impact there. And I knew he was just tired. And so I was like, no, cool, it's fine. We'll appoint an interim department chair. That's totally cool. Had one of our associate deans being taken up in the provost's office as an interim vice provost. That created a vacancy, a vacancy at a bad time because we were going through CAPE accreditation, and we were also going through APE, another accreditation process as well. And I really hated going up to say, hey, Doug, can you just step in for a couple months? We just need, I just need, this is what I'm thinking overall. And he's like, no, I'm in. I'm definitely, in and so on. Which I was just totally relieved at, because I mean, there was no one better than Doug to get things done. And he did things, he believed in what he did, and I knew he was going to get done. He passed away unexpectedly on February 5th. I learned about it the next morning, and unexpectedly passed away. And then, had the funeral, and I just felt, I felt guilty about that, about he, not that we're in warfare, but I do realize that it causes stress. And the moment I had the most issue with is I met Aiden, his oldest son, came up to me. And he's like, hey, I hated you for the past 2 days. He's like, I was the one trying to convince him to step down back to faculty and take it a little more easier and so on. But he's like, I've concluded though, it's like, I know what he did. He said yes right off the bat. And he really believed what he was doing overall. And that was the hardest. I remember having the last conversation I had with him was about accreditation. That was the last conversation he and I had. And so, but he was, I don't allow myself to get close to people I work with very often. That's the first time I ever broke that rule, is getting to know him personally and hanging out with him, off hours, and hanging out with his wife, Fanny Cower. And so that was a huge loss overall. And every time I think about him a lot. And so some of you are in meetings with me when everyone's talking and I'm trying to get everybody's attention. I do the power cat. You see me do that and so on. That was his thing. He did the guns up at Tech, and he would do that, and it worked every time. It works every time here. And so that's my small testament to Doug overall. If you see Mandalorian things in my office, he and I both led the Mandalorian on the Star Wars, and so his wife Fanny gave me all of his Star Wars stuff, and so it's in my office. But a true believer, a true advocate for teacher education. Humor capital. So this is the first time I've never dressed up for Halloween, being provost, and I'll rectify that this year. But this is my body of work. This is my CV when it comes to So I've done Jack Sparrow, I've done Elvis, Ted Lasso. This was as a department chair. This was an interesting year. This is the first time I dressed up. I was a first-year department chair, dressed up like a squirrel. As an acorn I'm eating. I'm like, wait, in my late 30s, right? Dressed like a rodent. We have a personnel issue. We have a student issue that comes up. The vice president for student affairs comes to one of our faculty offices to talk about, it's very serious, like, it was just very serious about, expelling them. I'm dressed like a rodent. I don't have a backup outfit. And I go sit in the meeting, and once again, very casually put my acorn here because I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose the acorn. You don't want to lose your acorn. Sit there and then try the most distinguished pose I could possibly think of. Dressed like a rodent, like this the entire time, And but I had ears. I had the it was just So that was rule number one. Every time I dressed up, I had a backup suit in the office. So lesson learned. So if you have any suggestions for this next coming year Halloween, please let me know. I do request. Hopefully, anything that. But that was that was Barbie. That was last year. My last year at Texas Tech. Zarina. Zarina and I've known each other for a couple of years, and so was just went to my best friend has been a close friend for a number of years. We've decided to partner. Overall, she has two beautiful boys that are older in their mid-20s. Akmal is a talented artist and teacher in Uzbekistan. Her son is finishing up his dissertation his doctoral program at Texas A&M overall. We have a blended household she has 2 cats, I have 2 cats, so it smells wonderful. We're rocking 9 litter boxes. It's not enough. It's not enough. We buy so much cat food. The bonus thing, they don't get along. That's the bonus part of it. So it's awesome. So, but we have a really great life. So she's much more than I could ever deserve. So just thank you for, being with me. So, I have 2 mentions of my own. I have Gwendolyn Mendez. She is she's a freshman at a swimmer at St. Peter's University in New Jersey. And so really proud of what she's doing there. My son's 17 years old. He wants to follow in Big Sis's footsteps and wants to swim also at a D1. He's still trying to figure out where he wants to go. The thoughts of him is, I want to go where there's a football program and swim there. And it's like, okay, so we're talking through that. We'll get through that and so on. But both of these pictures are, they are the pictures I show you. There's another picture that he does that was inappropriate, but that's also him as well. But I gave you sort of a more appropriate picture, but he's like what I was, but without a filter. And so he just, no filter at all, and then she is highly emotionally intelligent, and so just proud of them both. Why does this all matter? How am I doing? Okay, so around time, awesome. My point is, like, families and communities make us who we are overall. And what I see is my family's story being the continuation of an immigrant story. And so we're just building on the cultural and social capital that have come through generations before. There's different types of wealth. It's not just financial and monetary. There's cultural, social, other wealth as well. So that's really important. The work we do at a land grant is thinking about how can we maximize the pre-existing assets that our students bring to us, and then kind of build on that, and if they build a sense of community for them. I think social mobility is that's the whole reason I think we have land grants here in this country. That's our historic mission. Access, opportunity, that is what we're built for overall. Once again, my motivation in this role is, how can we shorten the mobility trait from 10 years of my family, from my parents' academic journey to maybe 4 or 5, or get, how can we help people get their doctorate degrees and master's degrees and professional development to get them in their own journeys overall. My parents, how can we shorten that 10-year gap that, between start and finish, and can we shorten that to 4 years? But at the end of the day, I think about each opportunity that comes up. How can we smooth out the pathways to college completion, help students build their own supportive communities, and also help in their own career trajectories. So that's the work that's what's important to me. That's why I do what I do, and happy to field questions.
For sharing with us. Let's make sure this one's on. All right, does this work now? Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us, and we'd love to open it up for questions. If anyone has one. Yeah, Paulicia, a former What Matters to Me and Why speaker.
I was cool till everybody started looking at me. I have to dip out, but thank you very much for this. I know it's not easy. I love The Mandalorian too. You should visit my office and see what I have going on. And we do have 6 cats in our home, and it's a blended family, so I do understand. But one thing that I understand, social mobility and all that, college changed not only my life as a 10th grade high school dropout, but it has changed that for my children. I have one graduating in December with her master's. But my question, and we had this conversation in our family this weekend, a lot of people say that my kids are spoiled because they did not have the struggle that I did, and I have busted my ass to make sure they did not, even when I was a single parent. A lot of people think that, your child turns 18, regardless of what the research says, that they should be put out and made to get what we got on their own. I don't share that, but how do you feel about that? And you think it's more prevalent in other cultures than some?
There's context to everything, right? And it's also it's a different generation. I'm Generation X, I'm assuming you're Generation X. We're built a little different. Our parents are baby boomers, greatest generation, that they were built different than we were. And so I think that's the most healthiest approach is, your path is going to be different than your parent, and I think if there's anything, there's a lot of positivity in your story because your children have, you've created a world in which they have that buffer, a buffer that you didn't have. But yeah, the challenge is the same. How do you keep them like, okay, that's great, but it's like the margin of error is still that big, overall. And I literally was texting my daughter yesterday about that because she was having some motivational issues getting her homework done as a freshman in college. And so diplomatically not trying to be old school on her, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you gotta take care of business, you want this life, you gotta work for it, and so, but I think, approaching it, a contextualized approach is the best approach overall. And the same thing with working with student affairs, the student population changes every 5 years. And as we think about we'll be dealing with a COVID generation. So there's been that 2-year gap overall. And we're going to be dealing with that for the next 8 years, and that's going to have implications on their thought process and how they view social media, how they deal with the remedial education. And so, like I said, we're going to be talking about, that's going to outlive the next gen 2030 plan. And so that's just something we're going to have to live with for the next couple of years. But I think thinking very carefully, not every generation is the same. Not everyone's lived experience is the same. Growing up as a person of color in this country is different as maybe others. Definitely growing up, a first immigrant, from an immigrant family or being an immigrant now, that is the anxiety level crazy. So.
You mentioned the importance of staff at a university. What changes would you like to see it in that area?
Sorry, real quick, can we have you say it on the mic so our folks on Zoom? And would you mind introducing yourself? I realized I introduced Policia for her, but that'd be great if you could say hello.
Sure. Melissa Glasser, Recruitment and Admissions. My question was, you mentioned the importance of staff to a university. What changes would you like to see at Kansas State in that area?
I think at some point we'd like, being 10 months in, we'd love to have a climate survey of what the experience of staff are on this campus. What exactly is the morale? What are some issues? Going back to Pat's story, her and I have had conversations about, how staff have been treated her throughout the years overall. She was my #1 bellwether when we hired new faculty. I said, when we had new faculty candidate come in, I was like, Pat, did they treat you with respect? It's like, yes. And that's like, good. It's like, if it was no, they were all made off the list overall. But just making sure we have that staff are treated with respect by the faculty, or treated by respect with everybody. Because in many situations, if not most, you all have more face-to-face interaction with our students and faculty. And so, but I think the first thing is taking the assessment of what is actually the climate survey here, what they call the campus survey here, not only here in Manhattan, but we also don't want to neglect Olathe and Salina as well. So I think assessing what that's like, so.
We've got one question from someone on Zoom. Tracy, do you want to?
This message is from Karina. Can you share any lessons learned from mentoring others?
I think listening to what makes them them. You saw the picture that I have with the group picture in the College of Education. I worked with 4 different department chairs there. I treat them all the same by interacting with them differently, based on their skill set, based on their temperament. Know your folks. But I think the first thing to be a responsible mentor is to listen, and you're not trying to make a clone of yourself. That's another part of it as well. I've seen many mentors like, oh, I just want to make, I want to make JP 2.0, and it's like, well, maybe the world doesn't need JP 2.0, they need, whoever you're trying to mentor. So I think it's that listening, but also helping them on their journey and to also understand that what they're asking you may be a very small sliver of what you think you're going to offer. So they may just need career advice from you. Maybe that's your only role as a mentor, and they're going to a different mentor for life advice. And so, but you won't know until you start listening and get to know them a little better. So.
Kath Harris, Budget Fiscal Officer for College of Arts and Sciences. I just have a question is how far Wichita Falls was from Texas Tech? And how did that affect you being back home and by your family?
Well, great question. Lubbock was about 3 hours away from Wichita Falls. So that was my educational career. I got my master's there at Texas Tech. So that was I mean, if I had to be home, I could just right back, just had to avoid all the bores, West Texas. When I went to law school and got my doctorate at Indiana, that was a 12-hour drive, and that was probably a harder one. But so I think I timed it right. So it gave me sort of the training wheels to, okay, this is safe. I could be separate from my parents and my family. Did that for a year and a half, and then I went and extended that. And went to get my graduate degrees from another institute, another state, like 3 states away. My mom had the hardest transition and all that, in that transition. But it was it doesn't make any. I always made a point to go to Wichita Falls on a regular basis. I try not to go at least 2 months without going back home. So before a visit.
So you consider yourself on an adventure?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I am. I'm from West Texas. You can't get West Texas out of me. But I really have. There's being other places. And this is really important to understand. As many places I've been, I'm not trying to make this into a place it's not. I'm not trying to make this, Kansas Tech or University of North Kansas. It is Kansas State's its own culture. And the way I see it is my job is to sit here and absorb the culture and to understand it, look at where we need to go as an institution and kind of use that culture and bring the culture along with me, not to change my own image though. So I want to, as soon as I'm done with this job, I want this to continue on in the K-State way. I think I've seen too many administrators go in and they try to make the culture into their own image. And that's not, this institution will be here long, we're all temporary stewards of this position. I just want to help the institution along according to its own values and according to its own ethos. I'm not interested in changing the ethos, but it's a beautiful ethos. Don't want to change the purple, but how can I do to help improve the purple and do my part to move the institution along?
We have a question right back here, and then David will grab you.
Thank you. Thank you very much my name is Nilofer Khamizani. I'm PhD candidate at Department of Curriculum Instruction. So thank you very much for sharing your whole scenario. Obviously, a lot of things, your life, your academic, your career, your professional life, everything is there. And I really appreciate that. My question is really very simple. Throughout your life, now you stand here, what do you think? What is a life? And where culture stands in that?
I'm 51 years old. The average lifespan of an American male is about 74 years old. So just playing the averages, I got about 23 years left, in this lifetime. What do I want to do in that? In terms of my work lifetime, I probably have about 18 years. My name's not Gordon G, so I'm not going to be around until my 80s. But what do I want? What changes do I want to make? What contributions do I want to make as an administrator, as a faculty member, as anybody that cares about higher education? That's where my mind's at. Also, keeping track, because once again, we're in Health Promotion Week here, is my body is aging. The picture of me as a squirrel, I was in much better shape then than I was now, and as we age, our bodies take stress differently. And so just kind of weighing this all, not surrendering. I mean, this job can eat 27 hours of my lifetime a day if I let it. And so it's just, to me, just thinking about how can I have how can I have some type of work-life balance going forward and still do good work? And I encourage anybody that works around me, is that you can't take care of other people unless you're taking care of yourself. And so that self-care part, and that's the reason I really love that we have a week to dedicate and think about this overall, because that's really important. That work-life balance is really important. Family is really important. There's nothing more important. I think on my deathbed, I'm not going to think about, I don't give a rat's ass about accreditation when I'm on my deathbed, what I will care about is having my family around me. So, and that's what's the most important part. So that's how age is starting to mess with me. So, yeah. So,
Hi, David Allington. I'm an academic advisor with Arts and Sciences, and I'm on the committee for What Matters to Me and Why. I think I might be able to piece this together from what you've told us, but would you just go through all of your degrees, where they're from and what fields they're in?
yeah. Sorry. So Midwestern State, double major in political science and history. Went to Texas Tech to get my master's degree in political science there, and that is the home. The funny thing about Tech is John Dimper went to school there, but also John Hinckley Jr. We'll talk about him later. And then Indiana University to get my JD and my PhD in higher education student affairs. So.
Did you say the law school part? Did you do law school?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I went to Indiana for law school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and happened to be there when Bobby Knight got fired, and that was a fun experience as well. I've never seen a riot based on the basketball coach until I lived in Indiana. So, yeah. So, police in riot gear over a fired basketball coach. So, yeah.
Hi, Amanda Etter from the Military Affiliated Resource Center. April's month of the military child also. And so I have one question, one invitation actually, which is, can you talk about how the military, being a military child, impacted your pursuit in education, whether it's traits or anything like that? And then 2, we have a military graduation going on April 4th. May the 4th be with us. And then, so I'll send you a personal invitation as well.
Yeah. So I wasn't what you would constitute a base brat. My dad was already retired when they had me. I was born on the Air Force Base because he was retired military. And of course we went there for medical treatment overall. So I really had I think the relationship between military bases and the towns are super important. The town and gown relationships are super important. And I think that's one thing that I really treasure here at Manhattan, because we have a great relationship with Fort Riley and then Fort Leavenworth as well. But I would happily, I think the way it's impacted me, my dad has a lot of discipline, but he was always very gentle. He's one of the few Marines that doesn't act like a Marine, because that's just his personality. But you could tell that made a pronounced impact on his life. Not only, just in terms of the training, but also the focus overall. And I think I received a little bit of cultural capital from his experience as well. So, but it's made me appreciate the amount of service that the military family does. That it's not only that the type of sacrifices that military personnel make to serve our country, but also their families as well. So they're part of that journey.
All right, I think with that, can we put our hands together to show our appreciation? Thank you for sharing more of your life and your story with us. We wish you well. Have a wonderful week and a great end of the semester. Thank you.
Well, thank you for introducing me. So that's